We are now 364 days away from the 2020 presidential election. According to a New York Times Siena college poll, Senator Elizabeth Warren is leading in the key state of Iowa with 22%, but only by a slim margin. Our Ed O'Keefe is in Des Moines this morning. Ed, it's been a busy weekend for Democratic candidates in the Hawkeye state. What does this poll tell us?
Well, Anne-Marie, among other things, it shows us that Buttigieg is certainly doing far better here in Iowa than he appears to be doing nationally. And that's in part because he's starting to spend the $25 million he raised over the summer on staffing and advertising here in the state. The Biden campaign isn't terribly worried just yet, at least. They say, look, we just launched a $4 million ad campaign of our own. We raised $5.3 million last month. We think we're in decent shape. But one thing we noticed this weekend, the candidates now seem a little more eager to go after each other, and it all started with something Mayor Buttigieg had to say.
You see it's coming into focus, you and Warren.
Yeah, and certainly a world where we're getting somewhere is that world, where it's coming down to the two of us. Obviously,
Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is indeed on the rise here in Iowa, but he's not alone, with new polling showing that former Vice President Joe Biden and Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders maintain a grip on the top spots in the race for president. On Sunday, Buttigieg backtracked, telling CBSN it's not yet a two-way race.
Yeah, that didn't come out right. I can't remember the exact context for that.
But not before other candidates shot down his theory.
It's naive for him to think that at this point the fate of this election has been determined. But it's very important that anyone who wants to be a leader has the ability to walk and talk with every community.
That's a knock on Buttigieg's weak standing with Black and Latino voters. Candidates like Julian Castro say the party needs a nominee who can get them to the polls.
If that person can't connect with those communities, they simply should not be at the top of the ticket. It's too risky.
Meanwhile, the top issue of conversation this weekend, health care, and Warren's plan to pay for it, which would divert the funds employers currently pay private health care companies to the government and increase taxes on the wealthy.
It doesn't raise taxes on anybody but billionaires. And you know what? The billionaires can afford it, and I don't call them middle class.
Okay, Ed, so, people have been waiting a long time to hear about Warren's health care plan. What's the reaction been?
Well, look, moderates continue to dismiss this plan as mathematical gymnastics. Joe Biden, for example, over the weekend tore into it, saying that essentially what the country should do is just build on Obamacare. Even Bernie Sanders, the architect of Medicare for All, admits that he would raise taxes on just about every American, but that ultimately your copays and deductibles would go down, so overall costs would drop. It will continue to be a big topic of conversation, in part because it was a tricky series of proposals that came out on a Friday afternoon, and it's going to take some time before people really get a sense of what she's suggesting.
Right. Okay. So Iowa, first caucus is in the nation. They take that role very seriously. These are voters that really pay attention to what the candidates are saying. You've been speaking to voters. Any sense that they've zeroed in on a candidate at this point, or are they still undecided?
No, I love the voter that shows up with a Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar sticker on and says, well, this one's out of it, and I'm still thinking about these two. And there's a lot of that going on right now. Look, you still have 91 shopping days left until the Iowa caucus, so they have some time to make a decision. But if you talk to people here, get a sense of what's going on, this is a race that really is now between Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg. Biden is in the mix, but there's a sense that with that much time left, maybe somebody else somehow creeps up into that top tier. The fact that Kamala Harris over the weekend has decided to zero in on this state, throw everything she has at it, other people have done that with success in the past when they're far back in the pack about this point out in the race. So still very fluid. Nobody really totally committed to just anybody yet.
So let's talk about the issues that the voters are most interested in on the campaign trail. Healthcare, one of the top issues for voters. The polling certainly reflects that. There's climate change that was at the core of Washington Governor Jay Inslee's campaign. He's not running anymore. There's, Beto O'Rourke. He made gun reform kind of a centerpiece of his campaign. He's out. What does this say about how voters feel about some of these other issues that we consider hot button issues? Certainly there are issues that differentiate the Democratic Party from the Republican Party, but it seems like voters aren't that interested.
Well, they're not interested in a single issue candidate. I think that's the issue. They're looking for somebody with depth. The conversations we had with people over the weekend, healthcare comes up in every one of them. How to pay for it, access to it. You know, there's the argument over, do we have a government-backed plan that's mandatory or just have that option there? That debate will continue among Democrats and Republicans as the general election kicks off later next year. Environmental issues, gun control, and the one that I keep hearing from people is what I'll call sort of unity in government management. Cleaning up the system as it is right now, finding a way for everybody to get along again. Democrats, Republicans, have them actually doing things, not just arguing with each other. We've heard that for years, especially in midterm elections, but I'm hearing it a lot more this time, and I think that's reflective of the impeachment process that's underway and just the general nastiness of our politics.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of the impeachment process, how is that playing on the campaign trail among voters?
It doesn't come up unless we ask about it, Anne-Marie. And that's important for people, especially in newsrooms and in the halls of Congress, to remember that this is not an issue that is top of mind for most Americans day in and day out. And, you know, they know it's happening, but to them, it just speaks to the morass and the miserable nature of what's going on in Washington, either because they don't like the president or they don't like the fact that both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue can't seem to talk to each other and get anything done.
That's really interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, we give this issue, you know, a lot of attention, as we should, because it is historic. It speaks to some constitutional pressure points, but it's not something that's keeping people up at night for the most part. They are much more concerned about issues that affect them directly, and they figure that Washington will just sort that out. They also know, frankly, when you talk to them, that, yeah, it's likely the Democratic House will impeach him, but not that the Republican Senate will remove him. And so while they don't necessarily think it's a waste of time, they just think it's something that will sort itself out in Washington and ultimately won't have much of an effect on them day to day.
So then, as a result, are you seeing the candidates bringing the impeachment inquiry up on the campaign trail, or are they choosing just to, like,
Not
talk
really.
about other things?
No, they never have. I mean, unless they get asked about it. And the question they're being asked, if they're a senator especially, is, will you stay in Washington to sit as a juror and you know, stay off the campaign trail? And all 6 senators who are running say yes, they will. They'll do their duty, and if it means they're there for a few days or a few weeks, so be it. It's their day job. They've got to do it.
All right, Ed, thank you very much.
Take care.